Are you breathing? Let's start with an exercise. It's called eye focus, and I would like you to really pay attention to what I'm saying. Preferably, you should not make a mistake. So please sit up on the chair, erect, long, tall. Your head should be still during the whole exercise. So just head pointing at me. Okay, are you ready? Preferably no mistakes, okay? So we start looking up, look down, head still, look to the left, look right, look up, look to the left, look right, look down, head still, look up, look to the left. And how are you breathing now? Anyone that changed your breathing, maybe stopped breathing, please raise your hand. A few of you? Quite a few. The majority, I would say. That's how easy it is. Whenever we engage in something, it affects our breathing. So we can say that our breathing is affected by the activity we do, by our posture, and also by our thoughts and emotions. But the opposite is also true. The thing that we do, so when we change our breathing, we can also affect our posture, our activity, our thoughts, our emotions. So if I'm stressed out, my breathing is most likely up in the chest, it's fast, maybe my mouth is open, and I can also, by just changing my breathing, going from a slow and low breathing to a fast and shallow breathing, take me from a relaxed state to a stressed state. So it goes both ways. Our breathing is a direct reflection of our thoughts, emotions, activity, and posture. And by altering our breathing, we can also affect our thoughts, emotions, activity, and posture. So a good example of the importance of breathing is to compare it with food and liquid. So the amount of food we eat in a day is about 1 to 2 kilo, a couple of percent of our body weight. The amount of liquid we drink is slightly more, but the amount of air that we take in every day, we take about 1,000 breaths each hour. That's about 25,000 breaths in a single day. That's about 10 times as much as the amount of food we eat. So if you think about it, we can live without food for weeks, without water for days, but without breathing only for a few minutes. So we can say that breathing is the primary thing. If we ask our body, what do you want? The body will say oxygen. And everything else is secondary. Like exercise, sleep, drinking, eating, love, and even mobile phones. Maybe that's a surprise to some of you, but that's actually the case. And there's nothing new about the fact that if we stop breathing, we will die. But why do we die if we stop breathing? This is not a trick question. Anyone will have a suggestion? We all know this. Why do we stop? Yeah? Oxygen, exactly. That's the answer. We die because we get lack of oxygen. But the next question then, why is oxygen so vital? Why do we need oxygen? Why do we die if we don't get oxygen? Anyone that have a suggestion? This is a little harder. Yes?
The organs in our body need the oxygen.
Sorry, can you little louder?
The organs in our body need the oxygen to function.
They need oxygen to function. Yes, that's very true. And why do they need oxygen to function?
Because that's where they work.
Well, I will give you the answer. To produce energy. Just like this city here on this image, or this room, or your home, we need energy. Our body has a huge need for energy. Every day our energy need is almost equivalent to our own body weight. That's how much energy is produced in our body. And we can mainly do it in two ways. Without oxygen, which gives rise to 2 ATP. ATP is the energy currency of all living things. So plants, animals, and humans produce ATP in order to get work done, to fight a bacteria or to digest food or move a muscle or think a thought. We need ATP. That's energy. So it's similar to money in our pockets. A lot of money can buy us a lot of things. A shortage of money is not so good. And if we compare them, producing energy without oxygen to produce energy with oxygen, we can see that there is an enormous difference, up to 16 times more energy from the same amount of nutrients. So from one glucose molecule without oxygen, we only extract about 5 to 6% of the available energy, while when oxygen is available, up to 100%. An example of an activity where we don't have the ability to oxygenate our muscles, that's a 100 meters race. Our heart can't pump blood fast enough. Our breathing rate is not fast enough in order to oxygenate these muscles. So the characteristics of a 100 meters race is that the endurance is very, very short and the recovery is very, very long. And this has to do with shortage of energy, shortage of oxygen. So if we think about the city or this room or our home and we get lack of energy, our fridge may not work, the lights may not work, the fans may not work, which of course puts us in big trouble. And the same with our body. And it's not either or, it's not black or white. It's not that either we have a lot of energy or we don't have any energy. It's a spectrum. So if we start to engage in poor breathing habits, which will then deprive our body of the oxygen, and if we start doing that over time, if we don't do anything about it, would it be better or worse? I mean, if I have a slightly slumped posture and then I don't do anything about it and we meet again in 10 years, will I have a very nice erect posture, or will it have become worse? Most likely it's worse, right? The same goes with our breathing habits. If we start to engage in breathing habits, usually to a large extent associated with stress. If we have too much stress in our life and we breathe too much, too shallowly, too much with our mouth open, we will be better and better at breathing poorly, which will then take us down the road where we will be able to produce less and less energy in an efficient way. Which means then that we will get tired, right? So I want to go into some of the details in the body. The mitochondria, that's the place where the action is. That's where we produce most of our energy. That's the energy plants of our body. And about 10% of the total energy need in a day is produced by something called fermentation. And there is no oxygen required for that process. But the remaining 90%, they should be done in the mitochondria. And the mitochondria, they are extremely powerful. So if you compare the mitochondria with the sun, you compare gram to gram, the mitochondria is so powerful, it produces 10,000 times more energy than the sun. Of course, the sun is a little bit bigger, so that's why it produces more heat. but still, the mitochondria, they are absolutely amazing. And the cells with a large number of mitochondria, those are of course the cells that have a big need for energy. That makes sense, right? If I'm for example, a brain cell, the brain, it only weighs about 1/50th part of our body weight, but it takes care of about 20% of our total energy consumption. So our brain, our nerve cells have a lot of mitochondria in order to meet this huge energy need. The same with our heart, our muscles, liver, eyes. All these cells in these organs have several thousand mitochondria. But you know which place in the body that have the most mitochondria? That's a fertilized egg. It's easy to understand. When the sperm and the egg unite, there is a huge demand for energy in order to proliferate and create a miracle, basically. So a fertilized egg have over 100,000 mitochondria. Okay, let's move on and ask the question, what actually happens in our body when we breathe? So I'd like you to all take a big breath, fill up your lungs. Come on, let's do that again. Great, you fill up your lungs, and then, does that mean that this big breath, does it give more oxygen to our muscles, to our heart, to our brain? No, actually it doesn't. Less is more. And if you ask the question, why does mouth-to-mouth resuscitation work? If there is someone lying on the floor, fainted, maybe in an accident, and we do the mouth-to-mouth breathing, the reason why that works is because the air we exhale contains oxygen. Otherwise, it wouldn't work, right? And it's when you are sitting now when you are at rest, almost 3/4, 75% of the oxygen you inhale, you exhale again. So we only use a very small amount. So then it makes sense, right? The big breath, when we took in more oxygen, that has no effect, zero effect. Because we already have much more oxygen in our body than we need. So maybe if we thought about why we breathe, we may have heard that we breathe in order to inhale the life-sustaining oxygen and exhale the poisonous, horrible waste product, carbon dioxide. How many have heard about carbon dioxide before? In terms of our body? Not in terms of global warming? Okay, quite a few knows about carbon dioxide. So oxygen is something we take in from the outside when we inhale. Oxygen is something that is produced in our body and leave our body when we exhale. And we may think that oxygen is the thing and carbon dioxide is the horrible thing, but that is not correct. That is actually as far away from the truth as you can come. And if we take a step back and think about it, if we have a car, does it run better if it gets more fuel? I'm going at the same speed, but then I decide, oh, I want to give my car a little bit more fuel. Does it run better? No, it doesn't. It stops both if it gets too much or too little fuel. It's all about balance. Water, most of us know that we contain about 70-60% water, and it's important to drink water. But if I drink 10 liters per day, of course it's too much, right? We need to have an intake of water that matches our needs. The same with our breathing. It should match our need, whether we are sitting in the sofa or if we're out running or doing other activities. In every single moment, our breath should match our body's needs. And the problem with impaired breathing is that we get too much oxygen, just like this big breath where we exaggerate a little bit. We get too much oxygen and too little carbon dioxide, because if we take a big breath in, we overbreathe. We can also call it hyperventilation, a low-grade form of hyperventilation. When we take in too much air, we also blow out when we exhale the same amount of air, and that means that too much carbon dioxide leaves our body. And carbon dioxide is actually really, really important. So let's do another exercise. Follow your breaths. I'd like you all to stand up. Put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach. And just follow your breath. And we start with adapting a slightly slumped posture. So one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach, and just pay attention to your breathing. Is it easier or harder to breathe when you adapt a slumped posture? Most people find that it's a bit harder to breathe, that the breath will be more shallow up in our chest. So while we're down here in this slumped posture, try to think positive. Oh, it's a beautiful day. I'm in love. Whatever. It's not that easy either, is it? Something that's not right here when we have this slumped posture. So, okay, let's do the opposite. We still have one hand on the chest and one hand on the stomach. And pay attention to your breathing. Notice if it's easier to breathe down into your stomach compared to when you have a slumped posture. So you stand up straight and tall. And when you're in this position, also if you try to think negative, it's not that easy either. Oh, life sucks. It's much easier to think like that when you have this posture. So everything is connected, right? Our thoughts, our emotions, our breathing, and our physical body. So let's continue this exercise, but we'll sit down. So you can all sit down. So still one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach. And you can close your eyes if you want to, and just listen to me and answer to yourself. When you pay attention to your breathing, are you breathing fast or slow? Do you breathe high up in your chest or down into your stomach? Is your breathing quiet? Or do you make sounds? Do you get relaxed when you pay attention to your breathing? Or do you get a bit stressed out? Do you breathe through your nose or through your mouth? Okay, you can open your eyes. So everyone that feels more relaxed after this little breathing exercise compared to before, please raise your hand. I would say the majority. And everyone that feels more stressed than before, please raise your hand. A couple. That's actually how easy it can be. If we're stressed out, oh, what am I going to do? Our breathing usually reflects that stress. So just by turning to your breath, take a few relaxed breaths will make you more present, more able to deal with that stress. And for you that felt a bit more stressed out, that could mean that you would benefit a lot from improving your breathing habits. Because maybe you haven't done that much in the past. Maybe you haven't really paid attention to your breathing, and when you start doing it, you may want to slow it down. You may think, okay, I should breathe down into my stomach, and we enter into a performance state, which may then makes us a little bit more stressed out. But it usually gets easier if you just practice a few times. Okay, so conscious breathing is a concept that I formed, and in this method we work with 7 good habits. The 7 habits of conscious breathing. And the first one is our nose. Good breathing starts in our nose. Our nose is to breathe with, our mouth is to eat with and talk with. And if we look at this picture, one of my favorite pictures, maybe say more about me than about the picture itself, but you can see that the area of the nose is very, very large. If our nose is just to cultivate bogusin, probably the evolution has totally lost it here, occupying this big space in the cranium where we have so many vital functions like eyes and ears and brain. Or it means that our nose is very important. I think the latter. Our nose is probably the most underestimated organ we have. And the part that we can see and touch and feel, that's a small part. The big part is in here within the cranium. And what the nose does, it is that it prepares the air we inhale for the lungs. We talked about earlier 10 to 20 kilo per day, 25,000 breaths of air that we take in. So if you were to choose, unless you're a vegan or vegetarian, you have to choose between a raw chicken or a cooked chicken. I'm sure most of us would choose the cooked chicken, right? And if we were to ask our lungs, how would you prefer the air that we inhale? Would you like to have it prepared, or would you like to have it raw? I'm sure the lungs would answer that it'd like to have the air prepared, and that's what happens in the nose. Here, the air is warmed and moistened, and also bacteria is filtered out. So when we inhale through the mouth, we then take in a more raw kind of air that is cold and dry and full of bacteria, which is of course a stress for our lungs. And if we consider the fact that we inhale about 100 billion particles in a single day, even more if we live in a big polluted city, or if we spend most of our time indoors. And the question is then, if we filter this air or if it goes down to our lungs unfiltered. So good breathing starts in the nose. So if you get nothing else from this lecture, then that it's important to breathe through the nose. That's fine. It's a really good start, but it doesn't stop there. Remember, we were talking about 7 habits, but the nose is where good breathing starts. So the second is a low breathing using our diaphragm. How many know about the diaphragm? Have you heard about it? Okay, that's interesting. Now you see it here. This is a major important muscle. Everyone knows about the heart, I guess. And actually it is the fact that our heart and our diaphragm, those are the 2 muscles that doesn't rest. The only 2 muscles in our whole body that never rests. They're constantly active. The heart to pump blood and the diaphragm to help us move air in and out through the lungs. And our diaphragm is supposed to do 70 to 80% of the muscle work needed to move the air in and out. So it's extremely efficient at what it does. But when we are not breathing low, instead breathing high up in our chest, that's an inefficient way of moving the air in and out. meaning that those 25,000 breaths per day consumes more energy. So again, we get back to energy. No wonder if we are tired, if we have poor breathing habits. And it works like this. The diaphragm, it covers, you can touch it, feel it. It starts here in the sternum and attached to the 6 lowest ribs and all the way back to the spine. And when we inhale, it goes down and flattens out, expands in all directions, forward, backwards, and to the sides. And when we have a shallow breathing, we also tend to not get the air to circulate in our lungs. If we were to choose between drinking water from a creek where where the water is flowing, or from a pond where the water is standing still, anyone that goes for the creek water, please raise your hand. Okay, most of us will do that. That's the same with the lungs. That happens like in the pond. The pond where the water stands still really gives rise to an environment where there will be a risk for bacterial overgrowth. And the same is in our lungs. So when we engage in this shallow breathing, the air is not circulating, so we may have more bacteria, more particles getting trapped, and over time they lead to inflammation, and over time they could lead to chronic inflammation. So this is how we would like the air to circulate in all areas of the lung. It's basically following the principle, if you don't use it, you lose it. And the same goes with our nasal cavities, that we also want the air to circulate here in the sinuses. Otherwise we may end up with a blocked nose, stuffy nose, sinus infections. Same principle as in the lungs. If the air doesn't circulate, particles, bacteria get trapped. So the remaining 5 habits, I will just mention them briefly. When we are stressed out, we tend to breathe faster. So basically, conscious breathing is not rocket science. It's just simple knowledge that everyone can understand. We basically do the opposite to when we are stressed out. So when we are stressed out and breathing fast, we do the opposite. We slow down our breathing. I'm sure you can relate to that. Similar to the exercise we just did, we may, when we started to pay attention to our breathing, slow down our breathing. And then actually we oxygenate our brain better and get more relaxed. 4th principle is that the breath should be small, in contradiction to the big breath we took before, because the big breath just takes in more oxygen that we don't need, and it just blows off more carbon dioxide that we desperately do need. Further, we should have an erect posture compared to the slump posture, where we force our breath high up in the chest. Principle number 6 is rhythmic. If you now, after this lecture, start to pay attention to your breathing, you may find that when you concentrate, studying, watching TV, playing computer games, sending an email, writing a text message, that you hold your breath. That's extremely common in today's society. And the mechanism, the evolutionary mechanism about that is, oh, there is a tiger, to wake up our body. And we tend to do that a little bit too much today. We don't have many tigers around, but we have so many stimuli that makes us engage in this breathing pattern where we stop breathing. And of course, if we stop breathing, then we start to lower the oxygenation of our muscles, our brain. And the final principle is that your breathing should be quiet. So what do I mean by that? Well, whenever we do a sound, if we talk, we move air in and out of our lungs. So talk is fine, that's definitely not forbidden. But all the other sounds that we make, that or at night we snore, that means that we are moving air in and out. And that's not a very efficient breath. On the contrary, it's very inefficient. Meaning that it's like driving in a car with the parking brake slightly engaged. And instead of unlocking the parking brake, which is of course the smartest thing to do, we tend to push harder on the gas pedal. Like with our breath, instead of understanding why is it narrow here in my throat, giving rise to different types of sounds, and adjusting, correcting that, we tend to then breathe faster. So if we have a tendency to make a lot of sound, there is a risk that we have a narrow passage here, and there is a risk that we engage in faster breathing, which over time will lead to more stress, more inner stress. Okay, so why am I here? Why am I so obsessed about breathing? I've been doing this now for about 10 years, and I still think it's fascinating, and I still consider myself as a rookie, as a beginner in this fascinating area. Maybe I tend to think of myself as a breathing nerd. But anyway, the reason, one reason is because I've always had a racing mind. I tend to think of myself as I was born in turbo mode. My watch, my wristwatch, stopwatch was my best friend, or rather my worst enemy. I tend to time everything. I should set record. I should always performing, always being the best. I timed when I ate breakfast. When I biked to the school, I had 1 mile biking. It's not a long ride, but I had like 6 stop times. And if I couldn't set a record from start to finish, I could always set a record between stop time 2 and 4. So I was always in this racing mind. And one example, when I was 13, I decided I should be strong, so I decided to do push-ups and sit-ups. And the record for 1 month was 25,000 push-ups and 50,000 sit-ups. I could do 50 push-ups in 35 seconds. Just to explain how much I was up in my head all the time. It was all about performance. What I can realize today, when looking back, was that I was basically seeking the love of my father, his attention. And whenever I did something, when I was strong, then he acknowledged me. So that's at least how I interpret it. Okay, if I perform, then maybe I'm worthy of love. And further, those fear and worry have also been close companions. They usually go hand in hand with stress. If there is a lot of stress, a lot of racing mind, usually we also have fear and worry. One of my biggest fears was public speaking. I hated it like the plague. That was something that I would never ever do. And now it's more or less my occupation. I also I tend to be easygoing, laughing, but beneath that I used to have a short fuse. I could be very angry. If you don't believe me, you can always ask my kids. And I also had very poor self-confidence. One example of that is when I went to first class, I saw this girl, I fell in love with her, and for 6 years I was in love with her. And then in 6th grade she asked me if we should be together. But I thought, no, she can't mean me. I was really in love with her, but I turned her down because my self-confidence was so poor. Anyway, I have done a lot of things in order to, unlock the turbo, try to find other gears to try to move in life at a slower pace. And what breathing have helped me with is, I think Viktor Frankl, he survived 3 years in concentration camp. He's the author of Man's Search for Meaning. I think he puts it nicely when he says that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. That's what conscious breath have meant to me, that I'm able to get a millisecond or half a second or whatever, so that I realize that I'm not slave to the programs that was installed in me when I was a kid, when I grew up. That I don't have to be angry, I don't have to be worried, I don't have to be afraid. So I'm far less stressed today, I'm much braver, all these things. So when I say that the conscious breath have helped me to open up a window of opportunity to react differently to incoming stimuli, it's I don't think I'm exaggerating when I'm saying that it has actually changed my life. And how I work and operate, if I come across something that I like, that is good, I want to spread it. So since I started teaching conscious breathing, I've helped tens of thousands of people, and it's amazing how easy it could be, actually. Turning to our breath, applying the good habits, and you can reap a lot of the benefits. More energy, calmer mind, and so forth. And that was one reason why I'm so obsessed with breathing. And the second reason was that I've helped others. And the third reason is linked to this question. So, have your doctor in any way, shape, or form ever asked you about your breathing habits? Please raise your hands. Anyone that have that experience? 1, 2, great. 3, awesome. This kind of confirms the statistics I have here, because I've asked this question to thousands of people. 98 to 99% says no. And what I realized is that a lot of people that come to my courses, to my clinic, to my workshops, they may have had asthma for 30 years, so they have low energy, or they have a number of health issues, and they realize when they start to improve their breathing that they would have wanted to have that advice maybe 20, 30 years ago. But the medical profession, I'm sorry to say, but their knowledge about breathing is not that big. So this is another reason why I really want to spread it, because we all need this simple knowledge. This is something that we all can do, improve our breathing. So, why conscious breathing? 6 important reasons. We've already talked about energy, and if we are tired, then we can go to our breathing. We don't necessarily need to take an energy drink, a Coke, or a coffee. We can also turn to our breathing to get more energy. A study that was done on 8 healthy individuals with no sleep problems. They blocked their nose so that they could only breathe through their mouth while sleeping. What happened was that all participants started to snore already the first night. One person developed sleep apnea, which means you hold your breath while sleeping, which is not particularly good for our body oxygenation. And sleep is very, very important for us. Maybe have you heard the expression, practice makes perfect? You study or you learn to bike or something, and you repeat it and you repeat it, and then you get good at it. But actually, there is one component missing. You do not only need to do practice, you also need to sleep. Studies show that if you do a practice, you play the piano, and then you can't really get it, and then you get a night's sleep, and then you wake up in the morning, then you can play just like that. Maybe some of you have an experience like that. So sleep is extremely important, and it's not only about the number of hours in bed, it's also about the quality of sleep. And the reason why we need to sleep, a major reason, is because the brain is reorganizing. So for example, if you learn something in the morning and you measure the brain activity in the night when you are examined about what you have been taught, the short-term memory will be active. But if you do the same thing next morning after a night of sleep, that memory has moved to the long-term memory. So you can think of sleep as a way for the brain to reorganize, to like defragmentation of the hard drive. So the short-term memory is the USB drive, and the long-term memory is the big, huge hard drive. And if we don't get the sleep we need, we kind of are not able to put things in order in the different boxes that we have in the brain, being able to see patterns and see the bigger picture. We will always be running uphill. And breathing and sleep is really closely related. So a study I just participated in at Stanford, where it was a 3-week study. For 10 days, we blocked our nose, like on the picture here, so we could only breathe through our mouth. Actually, I didn't only look stupid. After a few days, I also started to feel stupid. I made a lot of stupid mistakes. But now we're talking about sleep. And one thing we did in this study was to record the sound we made while sleeping. So here is the first 4 nights. The more yellow and bluish, greenish, the more snore sound. So these are the 4 first nights, for the night 5 to 8, and the remaining 2 nights. And guess what happened when we switched? We took off the thing that blocked our nose and taped our mouth so that we could only breathe through our nose. On average here with the blocked nose, I snored 2 hours, 45 minutes. This is how it looked like with taped mouth. The complete opposite. I snored on average 10 minutes per night. You can imagine the energy I felt in the morning, waking up after sleeping like this, compared to after sleeping with my nose blocked. I was really drained of energy when we did the 10 days of blocked nose. And this is interesting. Night number 9 in the taped mouth, I suddenly got up to a score of 11. You see, the 2 nights before I had 1 and 1, and the night 10 I had also 1. The reason why I had suddenly went up to 11, which is quite percentage-wise, is a big increase from 1 to 11 to 1. It was because we ate the same things. We had the same breakfast, same lunch, and same dinner every day. I mean, the thing we ate during the first 10 days, we repeated the same eating habits the following 10 days. So what happened when I started to get tired, when I had my nose blocked, I got more cravings. So the last 4 days of blocked nose, I had ice cream, I had chocolate, I had beer, I had pizza. And one of the nights I repeated that. So after the pizza, after the beer and the chocolate and the ice cream, this is the reason why I had 11 in the snore score. So just to show that relationship, it's quite interesting. And it makes sense, right? We sleep poorly, we get low energy, and then we need the fast energy, like the junk food. It really goes hand in hand. I'm sure we can all relate to that. If we had a poor night's sleep, it is easier to have those cravings. So this woman, Katarina, she is 50. For 30 years, she had really poor sleep, waking up 6 to 8 times per night. And after she started to tape her mouth at night, it was like turning a hand. She says that during the 30 days of mouth taping, I have slept more full nights than I've done in 30 years combined. That's quite amazing. And of course, she's got a new life. So now it's time for us then to try the taped mouth. And you have this is the sleep tape. You have it on the side, on the outer rows, and Jonas is also giving out. So you should be able to try it now, get the experience. So what you do, this is, they are pre-cut, so you just do like this. It's very easy, and you just put it over your mouth, like this. It is voluntarily, so you don't have to do it, of course, if you absolutely don't want to. But I can strongly recommend it. You will not die. So this is just how you do it. You apply the tape over your mouth. You can also, if you want to, divide it in two and apply from your nose to your chin. And if you want to take it off now, please be gentle, especially if you have sore lips. And this is something that I can really recommend, because if we think about it, we sleep about 8 hours per night. That's about a third of our life. And we can, with our mouth closed, we can have our breathing working for us instead of working against us. And some people that try it for one night and say, well, there was no difference. I didn't sleep any better than usual. So this is nothing for me. I have my mouth closed, period. But I think that's similar to by going to the gym and go there once and saying, well, no, I'm not fitter, or I don't have more endurance, or I'm not stronger. We all know that we have to go there more than once, right? The same goes for the tape. So if you decide to try it, I strongly advise at least 1 week, preferably 4 weeks before you start to evaluate, because just as we talked about earlier, our breath is a reflection of the state we're in. Also, our sleep is a reflection of whether we are more stressed out right now or whether we are in a calmer state. So even if we have good sleep one night, we may not have the best sleep the next night. Maybe some of you even start to feel now that you get calmer just by applying the tape. And even if you already had your mouth closed, it may still feel a difference. Okay, the next reason why you should think over if you should apply conscious breathing is better sports performance. This woman, Ulrika, she exercises about 6 to 8 times per week, so she's really fit. But when she started to do nasal breathing while exercising, something happened. She didn't change anything at all, but within 6 weeks, she could lower the time it took her to run 10 kilometers from 55 minutes to 45 minutes. That's quite an achievement. And just to inspire people to try, I ran a few years ago a half marathon with duct tape over my mouth. I applied it all the way around so that no one should say that I was cheating, if it's possible to cheat in mouth taping while running. Anyway, I got a lot of questions. I think quite a lot of people got inspired to start thinking over about their breathing habits, because if we think about it, we can't really achieve to the best of our ability if our breathing habits are impaired. And most athletes don't have a clue about how they are breathing on the training arena or outside of the training arena. So for most athletes, there is a huge potential, untapped potential in increasing their performance. So a study I did at the CrossFit gym with 10 athletes, they did one set of exercises while breathing normally, and then a while later they did it with their mouth taped. And we wanted to see if there was a difference in their performance. And actually, I was a bit shocked because the way they were breathing with normal breathing was like this. So I did not expect them to be able to perform very well with their mouth tape. But they were actually able to perform at almost the same level. You see the activity they did, and on average it took about 25 to 30 minutes to do all these activities, and they were really exhausted. On the scale from 1 to 20, on average they were at level 19, so they almost gave everything they had. And Helen, that's a specific CrossFit exercise where you jog, you do kettlebell, and you do pull-ups. And as you can see, the difference is almost no difference. Some were a little bit better, some were a little bit worse. But they could exert themselves at almost the same level with their mouth taped. And we are no horses, of course, but still it's interesting. A horse, I mean, it can run twice as fast as Usain Bolt, weighs 500 kilo, a lot of beautiful muscles, and it only breathes through the nose. And still that's enough to oxygenate the body. We don't have to breathe like that in order to get oxygen to our body. Less is more, and when we do like this, we tend to go very shallowly, and it's very inefficient. So if you start to Google, I have several articles on the Conscious Breathing website, but there are also other articles about the benefits of nasal breathing while doing physical activity. This guy, he had a Swedish record in triathlon Ironman, 8 hours, 15 minutes. He's extremely fit, and when I did another study a few years earlier, and when he was biking at the same level, the same exertion, it was on a bike with 230 watt, and we compared mouth to nose, his pulse was 10% lower, and that's extremely much for such a fit guy. And a benefit was that afterwards he felt extremely relaxed and harmonious after the nasal breathing. Reason number 4 is to improve digestion. And you know about pH, right? pH is a way to measure the environment. So if we have an acidic lake, we may put calcium in the lake because the acidic lake makes the fish die and the algae to thrive, and we want to restore the balance, so we restore the pH. And in our body, we have, of course, a pH balance, and with every breath, we regulate the pH. And everything that lowers the pH, that is acidic, increases the breathing, because the carbon dioxide that is produced in our body, it controls the breathing through the pH. And when carbon dioxide is produced, it lowers the pH. It lowers the pH to the point where the breathing center in our brainstem realize, okay, now it's time to inhale. We inhale, and then on the exhale, we exhale the carbon dioxide, which then alters the pH. So the exhalation, exhalation rises the pH again, and a new breathing cycle is started. So with every breathing cycle, pH is altered up and down, up and down. And the relationship with sugar, or junk food maybe is the better expression than sugar, is that junk food or sugar lowers pH, which then means that, the body says we have too low pH. We need to restore the pH balance, so the body starts to breathe more in order to raise pH, to blow off more carbon dioxide. Can you see the point in the relationship, and that carbon dioxide is very important? So the junk food basically leads to overbreathing. And again, think about it as a spectrum. It doesn't matter if I take a Coca-Cola or 2 or 5 or 10, but over time, it will make a difference. So if you just look at pH of different drinks, a Coca-Cola have a pH of 2.5. That's really, really acidic. And just talking about our drinking habits, none of us would think about giving our plants alcohol, I guess, or our dog a soda. We give them water, and that's mainly our need as well. It's water. We consist of the 60 to 70% water, not coffee, not energy drinks. Anyway, another reason why it's good to engage in conscious breathing habits is because of our weight. Just as we talked about before, we can produce energy in mainly 2 ways, with oxygen or without oxygen. We mainly use 2 types of fuels. We use sugar and we use fat. And sugar can be converted to energy without oxygen, but fat needs oxygen to be burnt. Fat can only be burnt in the mitochondria, and the mitochondria only works with oxygen. So if we go around and have a slight form of hyperventilation, we overbreathe a little bit and thereby deprive our body of oxygen, we shut the door slightly to our fat reserves. So if any one of us want to lose weight, but we don't pay attention to our breathing habits, it's kind of an uphill battle. We can get there, but it's not the optimum. And several studies have shown that if people have a tendency to overbreathe, and they may lose the weight, and they will get it back again. They will go like a yo-yo, up and down. So, but I haven't come across any diet yet that considers breathing, which is kind of interesting given this fact. Reason number 5, to calm down a racing mind. My biggest benefit of conscious breathing. And just look at this picture. This is normal breathing, normal brain activity. This is after 1 minute of hyperventilation. The activity in the brain goes down a lot. And again, we can trace that back to carbon dioxide. Lower levels of carbon dioxide, a lowered carbon dioxide pressure in our body will make the smooth muscles surrounding the blood vessels to constrict. And when they constrict, well, then we will get less blood to the brain, right? And thereby we will oxygenate the brain less, giving rise to a picture like this. Of course, the brain can't go on for that forever, so the body starts to adapt. But we know if this is how the body operates and want to operate, if it has to adapt and try to find ways, this is never as efficient. So when we don't oxygenate our brain enough, we start to make mistakes. We maybe also, like in the reason number 6, we get more irritable, we get angry, we get more worried, afraid. And one reason why it is so interesting with breathing is if you come to the hospital and you have a panic attack. I mean, that's if you're worried, afraid, and the more worried, afraid you are, the closer you get to a panic attack. So panic attack is really a severe state of anxiety. And what you get then when you come to the hospital, it's a bag to breathe in and out through. And bag breathing works because of carbon dioxide. Because the amount of carbon dioxide that we exhale is 100 times more than what we inhale. So when we put a bag in front of our face, preferably with a little distance so that we don't deprive our body of oxygen and faint. So when we do that, we re-inhale some of the carbon dioxide that we just exhaled. So I have a panic attack. meaning that I have a low CO2 pressure, meaning that the blood vessels are a bit constricted, meaning that I don't get enough blood to my brain, meaning that my brain is in a bit of a panic state. And I breathe in this bag, and I start to increase the CO2 pressure, and thereby the smooth muscles relax and can send blood and oxygen to the brain, and we relax. The same if you ask a flight attendant. If someone comes to the airport, to the plane, and they are worried, they are afraid of flying, they will give them a bag to breathe in and out through, to calm down, which tells us a lot about the relationship between stress, worry, fear, and poor breathing and the lowered CO2 pressure. So with that, I would like to wish you to breathe well and be well, and thank you for listening.
If you like this video and want more people to find out about it, please hit the like button below. Your daily breathing habits lay the foundation for your health, energy and harmony. It is a real superpower, and to unleash it and thereby reach your full potential, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just press the conscious breathing symbol to the right of me. Also remember to press the bell button below the video to receive alerts every time I go live or post new videos. You may also want to click on the link in the description below the video to receive 2 free chapters of my book, Conscious Breathing. Thank you so much for watching. Breathe better and feel better.